I used to think the saddest thing about dying was not getting to say goodbye. Turns out it's knowing some people had already said it long before you ever left. My name is Richard Hanley. I'm 72 years old, divorced, retired high school teacher, lover of crossword puzzles, lemon pie, and jazz on Sunday mornings. I was married to Evelyn for 27 years. We didn't fall apart from hatred, just slow erosion. We still talk. She still signs her cards Evie and sends me pictures of her garden every spring. Before we get too far, feel free to subscribe and let me know where you're listening from. I read every single one, and it means more than you think. We made one son. Only one. His name is Blake. Blake was always good with words. Got that from me, I guess. But what he didn't inherit was the weight behind them, the knowing when to speak, when to pause, and when to simply show up. His calls became formal somewhere around 2015. Updates, not conversations. His wife, Natalie, took over most of the talking, not because I asked her to, but because Blake let her. She had this way of smiling through the phone, bright, chirpy, carefully distant, like I was a client she didn't want to offend. After that quiet funeral call, I didn't hear from them for weeks. No check-in. No follow-up. Not even a text. Christmas passed. Then New Year's. I sent a card, got an email back, one line, "Hope you're well, things are busy, we'll call soon." I printed it out and taped it inside my drawer, just to remind myself I hadn't imagined it. That was the moment the plan stopped being an idea and became a mission. Not a petty one, not revenge, just correction. My funeral wasn't going to be for them. It was going to be from me. A message. A mirror, and maybe, just maybe, a lesson. First, I made a list, not of things to do, of people to remember. My former students, the ones who wrote me letters after they graduated, the ones who said my classroom was the first place they ever felt smart. I found them on Facebook, LinkedIn, buried in alumni pages. I sent messages that said, "Hello, it's been years. But if you remember Mr. Hanley from room 204, I'd love to talk." And they replied. Dozens of them. Telling me about their lives, their careers, their kids. Telling me I mattered. Each name went on a spreadsheet. Then I reached out to the school board. Asked if I could rent out the old auditorium. I said it was for a private legacy celebration. They approved it within days. I called local jazz musicians. Booked a quartet, told them I wanted nothing loud, just smooth, warm, like sunlight at 3 p.m. Then I called Evelyn. "Evie," I said, "I have a strange request." She laughed. "You always do. I need you to write a speech about me, the good, the bad, but mostly the good." A pause. "Richard, is something wrong?" "No, not yet, but someday soon there will be. And when that day comes, I want something ready, something real, something that sounds like someone actually knew me." She sighed. "You still love your drama." "Guilty." She agreed. A month passed, then 2. I pretended everything was normal. I answered Blake's occasional emails, sent the grandkids birthday cards with gift cards inside. I played my part, but behind the scenes, the machine was turning. I worked with a lawyer to prepay every detail. The venue, the flowers, the food. I didn't want generic sandwiches and stiff chairs. I wanted soul food. Baked mac, green beans, peach cobbler. Things that made people close their eyes when they ate. I recorded a video too. Sat in front of my webcam with a button-down shirt and my old-school pin on the collar. And I said, "If you're seeing this, then I'm no longer around to argue about it, which means you can't stop me. So sit down, shut up, and listen, 'cause I have something to say." I told stories. I laughed. I teared up once. And I ended it like this. "You can forget a man while he's alive. That's easy. But you'll have a much harder time forgetting the way he made a room feel when he was finally gone." I sent the invitations 3 months later. Not paper, not formal, just emails. Plain, simple, direct. Subject line, a celebration of Richard Hanley. Body, I won't be there, but I will. You'll understand when the music starts. I listed the date, the location, and one request. No black, no flowers, just stories. I didn't invite Blake. Not yet. Instead, I called Natalie. "Hi, sweetheart," I said warmly. "Oh, Mr. Hanley, what a surprise." I smiled at the Mr. Always the formality. "I was wondering," I said, "what are you all doing on April 8th? Let me check." Pause. That's a Monday. I don't think we have anything. Why? No reason. Just wanted to make sure. She hesitated. "Is this about your health?" I laughed. "Health comes and goes. Memory sticks. Tell Blake I said hi." Click. And that was it. No explanation. No warning. Just a date. April 8th arrived like spring always does. Too slow, then all at once. The auditorium filled by noon. Rows of people, some older, some young, all holding programs printed with a single sentence. He taught us more than lessons. Evie sat front row. So did my old neighbor Judy, the jazz quartet, and 3 of my former students who flew in from out of state. The screen lit up. My face appeared. And I started talking. The room went still. People listened. Some cried. Some laughed. But everyone stayed. Even when the projector glitched once and had to be restarted. Even when the sound cut out for 6 seconds and then came back with my voice mid-sentence. Because if you wait for people to appreciate you after you're gone, you better leave them something worth remembering. When it ended, there was silence. Then applause. Then people hugged strangers next to them. Not because they knew each other. Because they knew me. Blake showed up 4 days later. Not with flowers. Not with regret. With questions. He knocked. I opened. He stood there with his jaw tight. "You planned your own funeral?" I nodded. "You invited everyone but us." "No," I said calmly. "I invited everyone who remembered me." His nostrils flared. "You made us look like monsters." "No," I said again. "You did that part yourself." He stared at me. Then he looked around the apartment like it was unfamiliar. Like I had become unfamiliar. "I don't understand," he muttered. "You don't have to," I replied. "You just have to live with it." He turned to go, then stopped. "Why?" I crossed my arms. "Because I deserved a goodbye that felt like a beginning, not an apology." Blake didn't call again after that. Didn't email, didn't send a card. And honestly, that was fine with me. Sometimes silence is louder than shouting and more honest. Instead, I poured my energy into the letters. You see, I wasn't just planning a send-off for myself. I was planting seeds. I started with Kyle Benson. He was 32 now, used to stutter in my class. I found a news article where he won a Civic Leadership Award for his work with at-risk teens. I sent him a letter and a $1,000 check. "Use this for someone who reminds you of yourself," I wrote. Then there was Tamika Ellis, single mom, wrote an essay about grief that made me cry in the teacher's lounge back in '09. She now worked as a social worker. I sent her a prepaid scholarship fund in her name, set to activate upon my passing. The letters weren't for legacy. They were course corrections. Tiny nudges forward, because I knew what it felt like to be overlooked. Ignored. Put aside because someone else thought you didn't fit the mood. And if Blake couldn't see the value in me, maybe someone else would. Not because I was perfect, but because I showed up. I even wrote one to the local newspaper editor, the same woman who printed my retirement story 3 years ago. I thanked her for her words. Then I enclosed a second story. Mine. Fully written. Formatted. Ready to go. Title, What We Forget to Remember About People Who Raised Us. with a note at the bottom, "Run it when I die," or sooner if they try to bury me before then. It felt dramatic, but it also felt necessary, because the world doesn't erase you in one big moment. It does it inch by inch, with smaller invitations, shorter calls, and phrases like smaller service and too busy. 2 weeks later, I got a card in the mail. From Natalie. It was blank inside. Just a printed message on the front. "Thinking of you during this time." No name, no note, no return address. I laughed out loud. Even their guilt came pre-written. I placed the card on my fridge with a magnet that said, "Do better." Felt appropriate. Now, let me tell you what I did next. Because this is the part where most people would assume the story ends. A bitter old man getting even through passive resistance. But you see, I wasn't bitter. I was building. I started hosting dinners at the community center every Thursday, open to anyone who'd ever felt left behind by their kids, their grandkids, or the world in general. First week, there were 4 of us. Second week, 10. By the 6th week, we had to borrow chairs from the church down the street. We called it Thursday Family. And every week, someone brought food, someone brought stories, and someone cried without apologizing for it. It became my favorite day. People shared everything. Regrets, triumphs, the weird habits their adult children had picked up from YouTube, how hard it was to text with arthritis. But most of all, we laughed. Real laughter, the kind that comes from people who've stopped pretending they're not lonely. And every week, I wore the same navy sweater. The one Blake bought me for my birthday 5 years ago and never remembered he had. It still fit. One Thursday, right as we were packing up, a young woman walked in. Maybe early 30s, long coat, nervous energy. "Hi," she said. "I'm looking for Mr. Hanley." "That's me," I said. She smiled, then held out an envelope. "I was asked to give this to you." "By who?" He didn't say, just said you'd understand. I opened it after she left. Inside was a folded sheet of lined paper. Written in handwriting I hadn't seen since Blake was 16. "You used to say you'd always have a chair for me. I didn't believe you. But maybe I want to come to dinner." No name, no apology. Just that. A maybe. A sliver. A wedge of something. I didn't cry. Didn't dance. Didn't even answer. I just placed the note in my drawer and thought, let's see if he shows up. He didn't. Not that week. Not the next. But you know what? Other people did. And that mattered more. Because for the first time in a long time, I felt like I belonged. Not because someone said I did, but because I built the table. Spring passed like a sigh. The Thursday family kept growing. What started as 4 became dozens. People brought dishes they hadn't made in years. One man brought his mother's enchilada recipe, even though she'd passed away over a decade ago. He cried when someone asked for seconds. We didn't talk about our kids much, not directly, but the ghosts of them lived in every folded napkin and every joke that trailed off without a punchline. I found myself waking up on Thursday mornings with a purpose, cooking too much food, laying out chairs like a man preparing for church. It didn't feel like a replacement for family. It felt like the real thing, just assembled differently. Then, one night, I saw Blake's name on my phone. Just his name. No picture. No preview. I let it ring. Then again 2 nights later. This time, I picked up. "Dad?" His voice was smaller than I remembered. I said. I got your note." "My note?" "The one from the celebration." I stayed quiet. He continued. "I guess I didn't expect it to be so public." I let out a dry chuckle. Imagine how I felt not being invited to Christmas in my own sweater. A pause. "I didn't mean to hurt you." "I know," I said. "You meant to forget me quietly." He sighed. "Natalie thought it would be better." Stop, I interrupted. Don't put this on her. She didn't grow up with me. She didn't sit in the back seat while I drove you to math camp. She didn't cry when you broke your arm and I stayed with you all night in the ER. I did. Another silence. I want to come, he said. To what? The dinners. I didn't answer right away. So he added, if you'll have me. Now, I know what you're thinking. That this is where the story turns warm and neat. But real life's messier than stories. And people don't just come back. They bring their guilt with them. They bring their pride. So when Thursday came, I didn't set a place for him. I didn't tell anyone. And at 6:07 p.m., he walked in. No announcement, no speech, just Blake, in a button-down shirt and old sneakers. He looked around the room, a little lost, and found me near the back, dishing out peach cobbler. Hi, he said. Hungry? He nodded. So I made him a plate. No grand gestures, no hugs. But when he sat down, the woman next to him said, You're his boy, aren't you? He gave a small smile. I used to be. And that was enough. He came back the next week, too. And the next. Sometimes with food, sometimes just himself. But always with that same quiet expression, a man trying to learn a language he once forgot how to speak. One night, he stayed late to help clean up. We worked in silence until he asked, Why didn't you just say something before? I looked at him. Because here's the thing about distance. It doesn't start with a fight. It starts with tiny decisions, unreturned calls, skipped birthdays, rewritten memories. And sometimes the apology comes too late. So I answered him the only way I could, because I wanted you to notice before I had to scream. He didn't reply, but he didn't leave either, and that was something. You'd think that would be the end of it. That once Blake started coming around again, everything would fall back into place. But that's the thing about broken glass. Even when you glue it back together, it never quite fits the same. And sometimes it cuts you in ways you didn't expect. Because what happened next? That wasn't healing. That was the real test. The Thursday family made local news. Just a short piece, 2 minutes, titled, Retiree Builds New Community Over Dinner. But people noticed. People like church groups, community organizers. Even a state senator's aide called me for a photo opportunity, which I politely declined. But the one person who noticed the most? Natalie. I found out through a neighbor who worked with her cousin. Apparently, she saw the segment online and said, well, now Richard's trying to be famous. She didn't like the idea that I had something of my own, especially not something Blake wanted to be part of. I could feel the shift, the tension creeping back, the way Blake stopped staying late, the way he laughed a little too loudly at nothing. Then one Thursday he didn't show, or the next. And when I called, it went straight to voicemail. I didn't panic, didn't spiral, but I knew something had happened. I got confirmation 3 days later when Rosa, the woman who always brought lemon bars, said she saw Blake and Natalie at a new development on the edge of town. The fancy ones. Looked like they were touring homes, she said. The realtor was with them. A new house. A new beginning. But no mention of me. Not even a call. It stung. Not because I wasn't invited, but because I almost believed we were healing. So I waited. Not for him. For the moment. Because once you've been erased, and then remembered, and then erased again, you stop waiting for permission. You write your own ending. And that's exactly what I did. Blake didn't call for 3 weeks. No message. No email. Not even one of those awkward gifts he used to send when he didn't know what to say. So I went quiet, too. Not bitter quiet. Strategic quiet. The kind where you don't slam the door, but you leave it open just wide enough for a breeze to remind them what they're missing. Thursday, dinners continued. Bigger than ever. Someone donated a coffee machine. A bakery offered leftovers. I started printing name tags because remembering names was harder now, not because of age, but because of volume. I never said a word to anyone about Blake. But I noticed how people looked at me differently. Not with pity, with respect. Then, a letter arrived. In my mailbox. From a law firm. My stomach tightened as I opened it. To Mr. Richard Hanley. We represent Natalie Caldwell and Blake Hanley in a matter concerning inheritance and estate transfer. I stopped reading. Not because it hurt, but because I almost laughed. They weren't buying a new house. They were preparing for mine. My house. Paid off. Furnished by 40 years of labor, missed vacations, and teaching in rooms with broken AC. And they were already circling. Not with love. With legalese. I sat with the letter on my lap, hands still. Then I went into the closet. Pulled out the binder. The one labeled Plan B. You see, I hadn't just been writing letters and handing out cobbler. I'd been watching, learning, planning. Because the difference between being old and being helpless? Preparation. I had already transferred the deed of the house to a local trust 2 months ago. A trust that activated upon signs of elder manipulation. And guess what? Natalie's letter qualified. Blake's signature sealed it. The house? No longer mine. But not theirs either. It was now property of the Hanley Community Dinner Fund. In short, the house was going to outlive me. Not for Blake, not for Natalie. For everyone they never thought to invite. I made sure the paperwork was ironclad, witnessed, notarized, fireproof safe. I wasn't angry. I was clear. Because people like Natalie confuse silence for submission. And Blake? He forgot something essential. I was never keeping score. I was writing the rules. 2 days later, he showed up. Unannounced. No Natalie this time. Just Blake. In the rain, hoodie soaked, face drawn tight. "Dad," he said, "we need to talk." I stepped aside. He didn't sit, just paced. I didn't know she'd send that letter. I stayed quiet. "I mean, she brought up planning for the future. I said we should maybe discuss it. I didn't mean now." Still quiet. "Dad, come on. You have to believe me." I tilted my head. "I believe you were present. That's all." He winced. I made a mistake. I nodded slowly. "More than one." Then he looked around the room. At the old bookshelf, the dinner table, the handmade clock that hadn't ticked in years. "Is it true?" he asked. "About the trust?" I didn't answer with words. I opened the drawer, handed him a copy. He skimmed it, eyes darting faster with every paragraph. "You're giving it to strangers." I corrected him. "To family, just not the kind that leaves people off lists." His voice rose. "You can't be serious." "I'm not angry, Blake," I said calmly, "but I'm not stupid either. You're punishing me." "No," I said. "I'm protecting the version of me who thought your silence meant respect." He sat down slowly. Looked older than he had a month ago. "What do I do now?" he asked quietly. I looked at him for a long time, then said, "That's not my story to write anymore." The next Thursday I didn't expect Blake to show up. But he did. Not to eat, not to smile. To sit across the room, arms folded, watching. I offered him a plate anyway. He took it, ate in silence. Someone handed him a napkin. Another poured him iced tea without asking. And slowly, I saw it. He realized he'd been replaced. Not in love, not in blood, but in presence. Because presence is what builds family. He left without a word. And that should have been it. But it wasn't. Because Natalie? She wasn't done. 3 days later, I got a visit from a city code inspector. Just a routine check, he claimed. Anonymous complaint. Something about unsanctioned gatherings. Right. A week later, an anonymous email was sent to the community center we partnered with. Claimed we were serving food without a license, unsafe practices, improper crowd control. I knew exactly who was behind it. It wasn't Blake. It was Natalie. Because people like her don't lose quietly. They retaliate. But what she didn't know was that I'd already planned for this. All the paperwork was filed months ago. I had our dinners registered as a, quote, private nonprofit meal share. Health inspections passed. Guest logs kept. Safety drills rehearsed. Even the local fire chief had eaten with us twice. So when the threats came, I just printed out our certificates and sent them right back. Natalie tried to bury me in red tape. But she brought paper to a war of bricks. You'd think that would have been the end of it. But if you've been paying attention, you know better. That was just the second gust before the storm. Because Natalie wasn't trying to just shut me down. She wanted the story rewritten. And for that, she had one last weapon left. Blake. And what she did next. It nearly shattered the one piece of my life I'd managed to hold on to. It came in the form of an article. Not viral, not trending. Just local gossip dressed as concern. A blog post shared on a neighborhood Facebook group. Widowed retirees' charity dinners raise eyebrows. Is it really about giving back? The piece included my name. My address, a blurry photo of one of our Thursday nights, taken from across the street through a hedge. Anonymous quotes. He seems nice, but something feels off. No one gives that much without wanting something. He's clearly trying to fill a hole. It was vicious in that soft, suburban way, the kind of slander that doesn't shout, just whispers on repeat until you start to question your own reflection. Rosa printed it, slammed it on my table. Who did this? I didn't answer. Because I already knew. Natalie had gone quiet after the paperwork didn't break me. Now she was trying to shame me into submission. Not legally. Socially. Make enough people doubt me and the dinners collapse. She was trying to starve us with silence. But here's the thing. You can only shame someone who still wants your approval. And I had buried that need 3 betrayals ago. So I made one final call. To someone I never thought I'd ask for help. My ex-wife. Evelyn. We hadn't spoken in 6 years. Not properly. Not since the day she moved out with a suitcase and a sigh. But when she picked up the phone, she didn't sound surprised. Hey, she said, I saw the article. Of course she had. She always read faster than me. I need a favor, I said. Legal? No public. Silence. Then, you want me to speak up? I want the truth out there, not the gossip. She exhaled. I'll write something, but only if I can say everything. Not just what flatters you. I smiled. That's the only version worth reading. Evelyn's post went up the next morning. She didn't hold back. She wrote about my faults, my stubbornness, the years where we drifted, and the ones we barely survived. But she also wrote about the man who always opened the door, even when he was tired. The father who helped Blake build his science fair volcano at 2 a.m. The one who, even after the divorce, paid Blake's tuition when her job got cut. She ended it with this. We couldn't make our marriage work, but Richard never stopped being a better man than most. If you don't know him, don't judge him. If you do know him, you won't need this post. And if you're trying to hurt him, ask yourself what you're really afraid of. It spread. People reshared it, liked it, commented. And when Thursday came, our table was fuller than ever. Even the mayor's assistant dropped by, with a peach cobbler. Blake showed up late, red-eyed. He walked straight to me, in the kitchen, where I was spooning mashed potatoes. She wrote it, he said. I know. She didn't tell me. I nodded. He leaned on the counter, looked 10 years older. She said I lost the thread. You did, I said. She said I forgot who taught me the meaning of enough. You did. He didn't argue. I'm sorry, he said. The room buzzed outside. Laughter, dishes clinking, the hum of a space filled with belonging. I looked at him and said, "Are you here to eat, or are you here to remember?" He said, "Both." So I handed him a plate. And this time he sat beside me, not across. But that's not the ending. Because the final move? That wasn't mine. It was his. And I didn't see it coming. Not at all. 3 weeks later, Blake invited me to lunch. Not at some restaurant. At his house. The same house I hadn't been inside in nearly a year. I almost didn't go, but Rosa nudged me, half joking, half maternal. Even retired kings gotta inspect the castle once in a while. So I went. I expected awkward small talk, some guilt-wrapped apology, maybe a check to make him feel absolved. But when I walked in, the first thing I saw was Evelyn. Sitting at the kitchen island, sipping coffee like she'd been there 1,000 mornings. And then I noticed it. The walls. They were covered in black and white photos, not framed professionally, just printed and pinned. Photos of Thursday dinners. Smiles, laughter, elderly hands passing dishes, kids painting signs, me holding a ladle, mid-laugh. Hundreds of moments I hadn't even noticed were being captured. Evelyn looked up. "Welcome to the archive." I blinked. "What is this?" Blake stepped forward. "We started taking photos a while back. I thought it was just for the group's social page." He rubbed his neck. "But then I looked through them, and I realized you weren't just feeding people." He pointed to one image. A young girl sitting next to a man in a wheelchair, both laughing. "She used to eat alone in the school cafeteria," Blake said quietly. "That's her grandfather. They hadn't spoken in 2 years." He pointed to another, Rosa handing out bread with a Santa hat on. "That was the day her daughter finally called." He looked back at me. "You didn't just build a dinner, Dad. You built a record." Evelyn nodded. "A legacy." I stood there, silent. But it wasn't over. Not yet. Blake took a deep breath. "I want to turn it into something real," he said. "A foundation, a permanent space, with you, if you'll let me." I didn't know what to say. Because part of me had already buried that hope, the version of him that remembered where he came from. And now? Now he stood in front of me. Not perfect, not healed, but awake. Then he pulled out an envelope. "Before you say yes," he said, "I want you to see something." I opened it. Inside was a deed to a small plot of land on the east side of town. Blake smiled. "Already zoned for nonprofit community use, and I paid for it, with my own money, no strings." I stared at him. He held up both hands. "No catch, just a start, if you want it." I sat down, finally. My knees didn't trust what I was hearing. Evelyn placed her hand over mine. "I think he's really trying this time," she said. I looked at them both. Then I laughed, just once. "Then let's make something that outlives all of us." We broke ground 4 months later. Named it The Thursday House. No fancy title. No board of directors in suits. Just tables, warm food, open doors, and a wall full of photos. We never spoke of that winter again. Never needed to. Because sometimes healing doesn't look like forgiveness. Sometimes it looks like work. Like building. Like standing beside someone who once forgot you and watching them remember on their own. It started subtly. A reporter who'd covered our community dinners emailed to confirm some inconsistencies. She asked about our nonprofit paperwork. Specifically, if any tax forms had been falsified. I blinked at the screen. I'd filed everything properly. I knew that. Triple-checked. But the wording in her email wasn't a question. It was a trap. A week after the initial suspicions, a man in a dark blazer knocked on my door. "Richard Hanley?" "Yes. I'm with the Department of Revenue. We're conducting a routine audit of your foundation." "Routine?" "Right. They asked for 5 years of documents, from before the foundation even existed. Requested my bank records, expense logs, even my retirement account info. It wasn't an audit, it was a fishing expedition." Natalie was digging. I went straight to Blake. He looked genuinely confused. "You think my wife reported you to the IRS?" I didn't blink. "I don't think. I know." He rubbed his temples. "Dad, she's been focusing on her new position. She barely has time to answer my texts." "Then she's better at multitasking than you think." I could see it in his eyes. Doubt. He wasn't sure anymore. Not about me, about her. But it was too late. Because the audit triggered something worse. The city paused all grant renewals until our finances were cleared. Suppliers started pulling out, scared of getting caught in a scandal. A local blog published a hit piece, "St. Richard? Not so fast." Anonymous sources. Hearsay. Smears. I knew the playbook. And I knew the author. Natalie wasn't trying to destroy what I built. She was trying to replace it. One night, I got an invitation in the mail. An elegant black envelope. Inside, a card. Thursday House Annual Relaunch Gala. Now under new direction. Honoring vision, order, and renewal. Hosted by Blake and Natalie Hanley. RSVP required. Formal attire. I stared at the gold lettering like it might bite me. There it was. She'd done it. Stolen the narrative. Claimed our community, our people, our mission, and stamped her name on it like a brand. I didn't call Blake. Didn't show up to argue. Instead, I made my own invitation. One the world wouldn't ignore. Because if Natalie thought I'd go quietly, she forgot who taught Blake how to fight. 3 days before their gala, I booked a town hall. Not in secret. Public. Loud. I called it The Story You Were Never Meant to Hear. I didn't invite reporters. They came anyway. I didn't advertise. The RSVP list filled up in 6 hours. Inside, I showed them everything. Not just receipts and timelines, but testimonies. Of the people we served. The ones Natalie cut off. The families denied support once she took over and restructured the dinners into networking opportunities. The woman who cried as she explained being told she wasn't photogenic enough for the new social media campaign. The boy who showed up with food in his backpack only to be turned away for wearing improper clothing. People didn't just listen. They burned. By the end of the night, the applause shook the windows. But the real surprise was Blake. He stood at the back the whole time. Didn't interrupt. Didn't defend her. Just watched. And when the lights came up, he disappeared. The next morning, the gala was quietly canceled. The silence after the canceled gala didn't feel like peace. It felt like a fuse burning. I waited. 2 days. Then 5. Then 8. On the 9th day, I got a message. From Blake. She wants to talk. Alone. Tomorrow, noon. Our house. Not a question. A summons. I went. But I didn't go unprepared. The front door opened before I could knock. Natalie stood in the doorway. No makeup, no pearls, no cameras. Just calculation behind tired eyes. She didn't offer coffee. She didn't sit. She got right to it. "You humiliated us." I tilted my head. "You invited me. You sabotaged everything we built. I exposed what you buried." She flinched, but not with guilt, with anger. "You think you're some kind of folk hero now?" she hissed. "A wounded father rallying the poor against the machine?" "No," I said calmly. "I'm a man who gave his life to building something real. You turned it into decoration." Natalie stepped closer. You made Blake choose. That wasn't your right. I didn't respond. She sneered. He's not going with you, you know. No matter how many speeches you give, he's not yours anymore. I studied her for a moment, then reached into my coat and pulled out a folder. Thick, stapled. He-K's. I handed it to her. What's this? Proof. She flipped through it. Bank records, messages, internal memos, tax discrepancies, donor complaints. All copied. All highlighted. She paused. You can't prove I don't have to, I said. But the people funding your new image? They will care, especially the ones whose names are attached to your donor deck. She froze. Are you threatening me? No, I said, standing. I'm giving you a choice. What choice? I looked her dead in the eyes. Step down, publicly. Say it was a misunderstanding. That you're pursuing other opportunities. Disappear gracefully. And if I don't? I smiled. Then I won't fight you in the press. I'll fight you in your inbox, and I'm better at paperwork than you'll ever be. She stared at me. I made Blake who he is. I nodded slowly. And now he gets to choose whether that's something to be proud of. Then I walked out. The next morning, Natalie announced her departure from the foundation. Cited burnout, said she was prioritizing family. The board issued a lukewarm thank you. No party, no farewell. Just a quiet erasure. She didn't return my calls. Didn't send threats. Didn't speak my name again. And that was fine. Because people like her only exist in mirrors. Take away the reflection, and they vanish. As for Blake, he didn't say much for a while. But one Saturday afternoon he showed up at my door. No agenda. No apologies. Just my son. He looked at the soup I was making and said, "Need help with the broth?" I handed him the spoon. He tasted it, nodded. Still too much cumin. I didn't argue. We cooked in silence. The kind of silence that doesn't ache anymore. That just breathes. But that wasn't the end. Because even after justice, there's always one last question. Was it worth it? And I won't lie, I ask myself that. Late at night, when the kitchen's quiet and the stories are over. But then the doorbell rings. And it's someone from the neighborhood holding a pot. Or a student I barely remember inviting me to their graduation. Or a child who asks, "Mr. Richard, are we eating this week?" And I get to say yes. Because we still are. Because I still am. And that, I've learned, is enough. For 2 weeks, there was silence. No word from Natalie, no updates from Blake. Just the kind of quiet that feels more like a warning than peace. And on the 3rd week, the storm arrived. It came in the form of a letter. Official stationery, city seal stamped at the top. I opened it. And as my eyes scanned the lines, something inside me snapped. Dear Mr. Hanley, due to multiple flagged concerns, your license to operate within community-based educational programming is under review. All activities involving minor participants are to be suspended immediately pending investigation. They were shutting me down. No explanation, no hearing. Just anonymous complaints and red tape. Natalie. It had her fingerprints all over it. This was her signature move. Take the money, smear the name, pretend it never happened. That morning, I called Blake. No answer. Afternoon, called again. Still nothing. The next day, another envelope arrived. This time, a petition. Someone had started a campaign to remove my name from the community center I helped build. The reasoning? Mr. Hanley no longer reflects the values of our organization. 100 signatures. Most were unfamiliar. Some were clearly fake. But a few stung. My former neighbor. A mother whose child I helped get through school. A guy from Blake's office. That night I sat in the dark with that paper in my lap. The words blurred, but the meaning was sharp. Natalie was back. And this time, she wasn't hiding behind committees or foundations. She was going straight for the legacy. But this was her mistake. She thought she was dragging me into the alley, but I was born in it. She came in heels. I came with gloves. I didn't waste time. That night I pulled up her filings. Legal records, business licenses, foundation grant trails, donor disclosures. And I found it. A name. Small. Buried deep. But deadly. Natalie had been receiving public grant money while simultaneously serving as an undisclosed stakeholder in a for-profit consulting firm tied to the same contracts. That wasn't just unethical. It violated city ordinances. Maybe even federal ones. I didn't go to the press this time. I went higher. The State Inspector General. I walked into their office with a folder, a flash drive, and one sentence. I believe a public figure has defrauded this city. I can prove it. The woman who received me didn't flinch. She scanned the folder. She clicked through the files. And then she looked up. "We'll handle this internally," she said. "You'll be contacted." I nodded. No drama, no grand exit. Because revenge doesn't need applause. It just needs accuracy. 3 days later, Blake called. His voice was low, unsettled. "Dad, what happened?" Natalie resigned. "There's talk of investigations. People are calling me. The board is panicking." I said nothing at first, then just asked, "Do you want the truth, Blake? Or would you rather I keep protecting the version of things you've been comfortable with?" He was silent. But the next day he knocked on my door. And this time he didn't come with denial. He came with hunger, for clarity. We sat. I laid it all out. Every receipt. Every thread. Every attack Natalie had launched. And every time Blake stood by in silence, letting her twist the knife. He didn't cry, but his eyes lost their focus. When it ended, he whispered, "I thought she was helping me become a better man." I met his gaze. "No," I said, "she was making you forget what kind of man you used to be." And for the first time in years, he nodded without resistance. Remembering the math camp nights might have sparked it. The story broke on a Monday. It didn't lead the evening news, but it didn't need to. By Tuesday morning, Natalie's name was trending in all the wrong places. Local philanthropist under ethics review. Foundation director accused of financial misconduct. The city issued a statement that same day, citing, quote, "deep concern," and announcing the temporary suspension of all her partnerships pending investigation. By Thursday, she stepped down from the board of her own nonprofit. The comment section was brutal. Fake kindness, real greed. She always looked smug. Now we know why. Wait, isn't she the one who gave that speech about accountability last year? People she used to invite to galas unfollowed her. The same journalists who once quoted her now circled like vultures. And the more she tried to stay quiet, the louder the silence became. I didn't celebrate. Not out loud, not online. I just took a walk. Past the bench where I used to sit with Blake when he was 5. Past the diner that used to give cops free coffee before Natalie modernized the neighborhood. I walked until I reached the brick building with no sign, no name, but a dozen kids inside playing ping pong and reading comic books. My name was still on the door there, and no petition had taken it off. Blake came over the next weekend. This time, he brought food, the same tacos I used to buy for him when he scraped his knee on the sidewalk and thought the world was ending. We sat on the patio, quiet at first. Then he said, "You didn't destroy her. She did it to herself." I nodded slowly. I didn't want destruction. I wanted air. He looked confused. I clarified. Air. Space. So people could finally see clearly. He stared at his hands. I should have seen it sooner. "You couldn't," I said. "She was good at what she did. You were in love." She wasn't, he said quickly. Not with me, not really. He didn't cry. But he stayed late, and before he left, he did something he hadn't done in years. He hugged me. Not out of guilt. Out of relief. The investigation didn't result in jail time, but it buried her career. The consulting firm dissolved within weeks. Grants dried up, and all the doors she once walked through with a polished smile now stayed shut. She moved out of the city a month later. No statement. No apology. Just a quiet exit. Fitting. As for me, I rebuilt the program. Not big, not flashy, just honest. Blake visits sometimes, not every week, but more than before. We talk about books, music, baseball. We don't talk about Natalie. We don't need to. Some ghosts don't deserve a name. The one thing I never told anyone, not even Blake, is what I left on her doorstep the day before she moved. An envelope. No return address. Inside, a single sheet of paper. On it, in bold font, I'd printed, "It's not that I wanted to watch you fall. I just needed you to stop standing on my name to climb." No signature. No threats. Just truth. Because sometimes the greatest revenge is clarity. And peace? Peace is knowing you didn't lose. You simply walked away with everything that mattered, intact. The weeks turned to months, and the dust never quite settled. Natalie's name stopped trending, but not because people forgot. They just moved on, the way people do when something loses its shock value. But reputation, that doesn't bounce back. Not when it was stitched together from borrowed quotes and other people's generosity. Blake told me once, during a quiet dinner, that Natalie was living in a rented apartment outside of Austin. "She says she's rebuilding," he added. "But I don't know if that's even possible." I didn't ask if they still talked. I didn't need to. Some silences don't require filling. He seemed lighter now, no longer navigating life like he owed someone an explanation for breathing. He'd cut his hair short again, the way he used to wear it when he worked in the garage with me. And he'd started painting, abstract stuff. I didn't get most of it, but it made him smile. One afternoon, I found him cleaning out the storage unit behind my house. He pulled out an old shoebox, dusted it off, and opened it slowly. Inside were photos. From before. Back when Natalie would join our 4th of July barbecues. Back when Blake wore sandals and smiled with his whole face. He flipped through them quietly, then paused on one. It was a picture of the three of us, standing on the porch of the old house, me holding a paint roller, Natalie mid-laugh, Blake with his arm around her waist. "She used to fit," he said, voice low. "Or you thought she did," I offered. He nodded, then put the picture back in the box and closed the lid. Later that night, as I watched him from the window loading the box into his car, I realized something. He wasn't trying to forget her. He was learning how to contain her. A memory doesn't have to disappear to lose its power. About a month later, something strange happened. I got a call, unknown number. I let it go to voicemail, but then I listened to it twice. The voice was clipped, measured. "Mr. Whitman, this is Gloria from Whitford and Ames. We've been asked to reach out regarding a potential collaboration with your educational program. Please call us back at your earliest convenience." Whitford and Ames. One of the old funders Natalie had chased for years. They had never even acknowledged my emails before. I called back. Turns out, the new director had read the viral article about me months ago and kept tabs. "I thought what you did was honorable," she said. "Quietly powerful. We're looking to support programs that do the work without needing the stage." I didn't know what to say. So I just said thank you. We set a meeting for the following week. The night before the meeting, I found myself sitting at my kitchen table, staring at the same manila folder I'd used to collect evidence months ago. It was empty now, the contents long archived, the fight behind me. But still, I ran my hand over the paper. The weight of it. The memory of choosing justice over silence. I didn't smile. But I didn't ache either. The meeting went better than I expected. Whitford and Ames didn't just offer support. They asked if I'd be willing to mentor other program founders, people half my age, people who reminded me of myself before I forgot who I was. I told them I'd think about it. Because for the first time in years, I was building something again. Not a foundation made of guilt or obligation, but of pride, quiet pride. The kind that doesn't need a plaque to prove it matters. And for once, I didn't feel old. I felt needed. When I told Blake, he didn't say much, just gave me that half smile that meant more than applause ever could. He started coming by more regularly, fixing things that didn't really need fixing. Talking about projects, kids, life. But he never said her name. Not once. Until one night. He was sanding down an old bookshelf in the garage. I handed him a beer and leaned against the wall. Then he said it, like pulling out a splinter. She called. I didn't answer. She asked if I hated her. Still, I didn't speak. I told her, I don't know what I feel, just that I don't trust her anymore, and that's worse than hate. I nodded. It is. He kept sanding, slow. Even strokes. She said she's thinking about writing a book, about the whole thing, framing it as a fall from grace and what it taught her. I scoffed. He looked up. I told her not to use my name. Good, I said, but she will. I know. We didn't talk after that. The sound of the sander filled the silence. Not awkward, just necessary. Sometimes you don't need closure, just distance. Then came the interview. It dropped out of nowhere, a feature piece on some mid-level digital magazine trying to cash in on second chances. There she was, Natalie. Perfect lighting, soft tones, a carefully curated vulnerability. Talking about her hard lessons. Her growth. How the system is quick to punish ambitious women who step outside the mold. No mention of the documents. The audit. The donations retracted under false pretenses. But she did say this. In the end, I learned that sometimes we hurt the people closest to us, and some of those relationships are repairable, some aren't. A pause. But forgiveness is more about you than it is about them. It was subtle, but it was there. An open invitation. A carefully veiled pitch. She wanted Blake back. She wanted her story back. Later that week, I found Blake in the backyard, sitting with a book in his lap. He looked up when I walked out, then gestured to the patio chair. You see it? I did. He nodded. She hasn't changed, I said. No, he agreed, but she's gotten smarter. That scared me more. Because a smart Natalie was more dangerous than a desperate one. He closed his book, looked me in the eye. Would you hate me if I forgave her? No, I said, but I'd worry. About what? That you'd forget why you left. He nodded slowly. I won't. I believed him. But I also knew memory is a fragile thing when love gets involved. And Natalie knew exactly which parts to rewrite. A week later, Blake knocked on my door. Not the usual way. This time there was tension in it. Hesitation. The knock of a man who wasn't sure if he was welcome. I opened it. He didn't smile. She's here, he said. I raised an eyebrow. In town? He shook his head. In the driveway. I stepped out and saw it. The silver car. The one she used to drive when everything felt expensive and invincible. She stood outside it, hands clasped in front of her, wrapped in a beige coat and a ghost of her old confidence. She didn't wave, just waited. She wants to talk, Blake said. Said it would be 5 minutes. And you? I told her it's not my call. It was clever, disarming, but not enough. I'll give her 3, I said. Blake stepped aside. Natalie approached like someone entering enemy territory with a white flag that still smelled like gunpowder. Richard, she said softly. I nodded once. "Natalie, you look well." "And you look rehearsed." She smiled at that, thin, tight, unamused. "I didn't come to fight," she said. "No," I said. "You came to revise." A flicker of something crossed her face. Shame? Maybe. Or just a tactic. "I came because I thought maybe we all lost too much already." "You didn't lose," I said. "You traded." She tilted her head. "I miss him." "You miss control." "I miss who we were." "That's the problem," I said. "We were never the same story. You just annotated mine until it sounded like yours." Silence. She looked toward Blake, who hadn't moved from the porch. "I never meant to break him," she said. "But you did," I replied. "And now?" She looked back at me. "Now I'm trying to heal." I smiled. Genuinely this time. Just for a second. "So am I," I said. "But that doesn't mean we're healing together." Another silence. Then she handed me something. A letter, not sealed. I didn't open it. "It's not a plea," she said. "Just something I should have said a long time ago." I didn't respond. She turned, walked back to her car, and drove off without waiting for permission. I looked down at the letter. It was thin. 1 page, maybe 2. I set it on the table without reading it, and never touched it again. Later that month, Blake and I were invited to speak at a youth education summit in Atlanta. Our small program had grown, funded not just by grants but by a quiet wave of public support. And during our panel, when Blake spoke about forgiveness, I watched the audience lean in, not because he was dramatic, but because he was honest. Afterward, a man came up to shake my hand. "Your son speaks with your spine," he said. I looked at Blake, standing beside me, taller somehow. "No," I said. "He speaks with his own, that's the point." It was a Wednesday when I got the call. From the clerk's office. "Mr. Raines," the woman said, "we're just confirming your attendance for next Thursday's probate hearing." I blinked. "Probate?" She gave a polite chuckle. "Yes, sir, your name's listed in the revised estate documents. The estate of Marjorie Keene." The name stopped me cold. Marjorie Keene. Natalie's former mentor. A woman I'd met twice, years ago. Once at a gala, once at a board fundraiser. A woman with sharp eyes, no patience, and the kind of wealth that made people nervous. She died 4 months earlier, with probate proceedings now underway. It had made news for a day, then vanished, like all rich people do when no one's left to gossip. Why the hell was I on the paperwork? I went. Of course I did. The courtroom was nearly empty. Just me, a few silent attendees, and a man in a suit who looked like he billed by the minute. He stood. Cleared his throat. "This won't take long," he said. Miss Keene's estate included a significant collection of private correspondences, which she instructed to be disclosed to relevant parties after her death. He pulled out a folder, handed it to me. Inside, letters, photocopies, dozens of them. All of them from Natalie. Some were old, flattering, strategic. Others were recent, angry, panicked, begging for favors, money, silence. But the one on top? It was dated 8 months ago. And it was damning. Natalie had written to Marjorie, asking for help covering the audit, blaming an internal leak, claiming Blake's father was trying to destroy me out of spite. She even included a list of suggested talking points in case Marjorie needed to speak to the press. It wasn't just manipulative. It was incriminating. Because at the bottom, Natalie had signed her name and accidentally attached a document showing she'd forged a board member's approval on one of her donations. It was the smoking gun no one had ever found. Until now. The attorney looked at me. Miss Keene, he said, included a final instruction that this material be forwarded to the appropriate ethics board or whomever you believe deserves to see it. I stared at the folder. My hands didn't shake. My breath didn't catch. I simply nodded. I'll take care of it. He closed his briefcase. She said you would. Perhaps she saw my fight as a reflection of her own. I sent the files. Not to the press, not to a court, but to Blake. Just one email, no subject line, no message body. Just the truth. It was his to do with what he wanted. I never followed up. But 2 days later, I saw that Natalie had deleted every social media account she had. And a week after that, the foundation she'd tried to relaunch folded without a word. The last time Blake and I talked about her, it wasn't dramatic. He just looked at me across the dinner table and said, "You held on to that, didn't you?" I shook my head. She handed it to me, just didn't know she did. He nodded slowly. Then he smiled, not out of victory, out of relief. Like someone who'd been carrying a question for too long and finally had an answer. It's funny. People think revenge has to be loud, explosive. But real justice? It's quiet. It's patient. It waits in the background until truth walks in and turns on the light. And when it does, there's no need to scream. You just hand them the switch and walk away. If you like this story, please like this video. Subscribe to the channel and share your impressions of the story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.